Money flows when you don't need it. That's what I realized one quiet afternoon, walking through an open field on the edge of New Mexico. The wind blew gently, unhurriedly, carrying golden desert dust and dry leaves that seemed to dance on there. Nothing seemed to have a direction, but everything went exactly where it was supposed to. There, money revealed itself not as matter, but as breath, an invisible flow that only touches those who are still. The landscape taught me more than any previous endeavor. For a long time, I chased money like someone trying to trap the wind in a glass jar. But there, amid the shadows of the mountains and the distant rustling of branches, I realized that what we so desperately seek arrives when it's not being demanded. The wind never blows where there are walls, neither does money. It finds free spaces, peaceful hearts, open hands. It's strange to think that the absence of need is the purest calling. When the lake doesn't cry out for rain, it comes. When the field doesn't demand the sun, it appears. There's something in not wanting that creates space for it to come. Money, like everything essential, doesn't give itself to those who squeeze it, but to those who allow it. And in that silence, I understood. The flow is always there. It just needs me to step back a little. There was an old stream in the North Carolina mountains that never ran dry, even in the harshest summers. The villagers said he knew the way home. He didn't run, he didn't fight the rocks, he just walked around. This was Wu Wei in water form, the effortless action, the direction that isn't forced. And that's what money also demanded, not pressure, but space. With each attempt to force the money to flow, it retreated like a wary animal. I made plans, set goals, controlled every step. And the more I pressed for time, the more time slipped away. It felt like rowing against the tide with tense arms. But it was by giving up control that I began to float. Not because I gave up everything, but because I let the river do its thing. Wu Wei isn't about doing nothing, it's about going with the flow, not against it. It's about planting and letting the earth take care of itself, not digging the soil every few minutes to see if the seed has sprouted. Money, like the harvest, doesn't respond to desperation. It comes the moment you stop pushing and start breathing. In the fields of Colorado, I saw farmers who knew exactly when not to act. They knew how to wait. They trusted the soil. And there was never a shortage. It was there that I understood. What you pressure paralyzes. What you allow flourishes. The earth is abundant with those who respect it. And money is like the earth. It responds to trust more than urgency. This is the paradox that frightens the mind, doing less, allowing more, and still receiving everything. But it's not about laziness, nor about omission. It's about tuning in, about not obstructing the natural flow of what was already coming. Prosperity doesn't need you to push it. It just needs you not to block it. When you hike the trails of Yosemite, your body tires, but your spirit calms. There's no urgency in the landscape. And yet, everything is complete. The trees don't rush to grow. The clouds don't struggle to rain. The world isn't in a hurry, only the ego is. And money doesn't respond to the ego. It listens to the soul. It is the soul that knows when to stop. It is the soul that recognizes the right moment to act and the right moment to retreat. And it is in this retreat that the mystery lies. What you let go begins to move. What you pursue hides. But what you respect with space returns with more. The mind wants formulas. The heart wants confidence. And Wu Wei doesn't give maps, but shows the open sky. He says, see, feel, walk together. Money that comes this way is another kind of wealth. It's light, continuous, silent. It doesn't weigh on the pocket or the chest. This abundance isn't born of control. It's born of intimacy with the invisible. It's like walking in the fog and trusting that the ground will be there. And it always is. Those who walk this way attract more than those who run, because lightness attracts what is subtle. And money, when it truly flows, is subtle. The biggest turning points in my life didn't come from the moments I fought tooth and nail. They came when I stopped. When I stopped screaming for help and started listening. Money came not as a reward, but as a consequence. Not as something earned, but as something allowed. This is the art of Wu Wei, living as if life knows better, and it does. Just watch a river. It doesn't compete with the stone. It doesn't resent the bend. It doesn't get lost in the labyrinth. It flows because it trusts, and it always arrives where it needs to. So too is the flow of abundance. So if everything inside you is tight, controlling, forcing ... stop and see what happens when you let go. What was stuck can start to move, and what you've been searching for can start to find you. An anxious mind is like a house full of doors, slamming in the wind. No room is quiet, and nothing remains for long. It's in this internal noise that money hesitates to enter. The flow needs clarity, but the rush to control tomorrow blurs the present. And without presence, money passes by but doesn't stay. There's a subtle force that lives behind the absence of urgency. It doesn't impose itself. It doesn't demand. It simply sustains. When we drown in thoughts about the future, we lose the power that operates in the present. And it is in the present that abundance begins to blossom. Nothing grows in tense soil. Anxiety seems like zeal, but it's a disguise for fear. Fear of lacking, of not being able to cope, of not being enough. But this fear creates a dense field, where money finds no passage. Just as wind doesn't penetrate a closed wall, prosperity doesn't insinuate itself into tight hearts. Excessive effort becomes a blockage. Hands that grasp too tightly are not welcoming, and money doesn't like to be grasped. It comes when there's space, not when there's a demand. It's like the sun, which doesn't appear to those who try to hold it, only to those who open themselves to it. An anxious mind closes the windows. The flow needs air. I often thought I was being responsible. I did the math, made plans, and projected scenarios. But deep down, it was just agitation. It was fear, disguised as organization, and the universe senses this. It responds to what you vibrate, not what you say. And what I vibrated was tension. Tension creates friction. And where there's friction, there's no flow. You can have all the right intentions, but if your field is constricted, the flow of money stops. Not because there's something wrong with you, but because you're filling the space with fear. Fear screams and money hides. There's a difference between action and agitation. An anxious mind lives in agitation, but true action comes from silence. When there's silence, the next step appears on its own, like a forest trail that only reveals itself to those who walk slowly. Haste blinds the eyes. On a walk through Oregon's Humid forests, I saw how moss grows where no one steps. Silently, it covers rocks and roots, a reminder that life doesn't need noise. Prosperity is like that. It approaches when you are at peace. It doesn't respond to shouts. It's in the quiet of our minds that we hear the subtle signs. Intuition, unexpected invitations, paths not on the map. And when these signs arrive, they come not with promises, but with lightness. They're like a breeze on our skin, little touches from the invisible saying, I'm here. When my mind quiets, I feel the field shift. It's not magic, it's clarity. Everything starts to move more harmoniously. And often, what seemed far away was just waiting for space to come closer. Money needs to breathe too. Learning to trust wasn't easy. The mind wants guarantees, proof, and deadlines. But flow doesn't negotiate with urgency. It responds to what's natural. Anxiety suffocates. Trust invites. And in that difference lies change. There are days when everything seems to fall apart. But even on those days, if I listen to my body and return to the present, something changes. Not always externally, but within. And that inner self is the first place where money begins to arrive. Because it comes from vibration, not control. Silence is not the absence of thought, it is presence. It is the choice not to feed the ghosts of fear, not to react to the impulse to do things for the sake of doing them. It is in this place that abundance settles, like a guest who only enters where there is peace. And it is you who prepares this house. Money isn't driven by urgency, it's driven by attunement. And the anxious mind is always out of tune, like an instrument playing out of tune. When you quiet down, the music starts playing again. And money listens and approaches and flows. This is the invisible work. It's not about thinking more, but about thinking less. About letting go of what's holding you back. About making space within. Because what you desire is already on its way. You just need to find open doors. And a peaceful mind is the most welcoming door there is. There is something in silence that no words can reach. It is in this soundless space that the greatest riches in the universe are formed. Trees grow in silence. Minerals accumulate in silence. Even gold, buried deep within the earth, matures in the silent darkness of time. Money listens to silence, not to the cries of urgency. On the vast plains of Montana, the wind blows for hours without interruption. There is no rush, no noise, just the continuous dance between heaven and earth. There, I understood that money is a current of air, subtle, unpredictable, sensitive. And that, like the wind, it doesn't visit those in turmoil. It touches those at peace. Inner silence is like a still lake at dawn. It is there that life's reflection reveals itself clearly. When there is noise, everything gets jumbled, images distort. Opportunities become confused with distractions. But when the mind rests, the flow aligns, and money can see where to land. The greater the urgency, the more doors close. Abundance requires receptivity, not desperation. You can't force the sun to appear. You can't pull a flower to make it grow. Money comes the same way, at the right time when the field is prepared. And the field prepares itself in silence. There's a kind of presence that says nothing, but conveys everything. Have you ever felt this around someone who doesn't need to speak to be noticed? Silence has power. The universe listens to what is. At peace, money Being part of the universe also listens. It comes when it's not being pursued. On solitary walks through the silent regions of New Mexico, I learned that the absence of noise isn't loneliness, it's an invitation. The stones, the shadows, the wind between the mountains. Everything there is presence. Everything there listens. And in that listening, there's a wisdom that the noises of the city don't allow us to perceive. We live surrounded by stimuli that make us believe that only by constantly acting can we achieve anything. But nature doesn't work that way. The ocean recedes before it advances. Winter silences the earth before spring blossoms. Money, like the tide, needs pauses to renew itself. In silence, what is true reveals itself. The mind stops inventing urgencies, and the heart begins to guide. It is in silence that we sense whether that choice resonates with our soul or with our fear. And money responds only to that which resonates with truth. It ignores the disguise of empty effort. When I stopped talking about what I needed and started listening to what was already there, everything changed. Ideas returned. Paths appeared. The right people arrived. And money came as a reflection, not a reward. It was drawn by clarity, not by need. Silence isn't hiding. It's creating a field. It's stepping out of the way so something bigger can act. Like the farmer who prepares the land and then waits. Like the fisherman who casts the net and waits. Money comes in the same dance between doing and trusting, between acting and being still. The practice of inner silence is an offering to the universe, a gesture that says, I'm ready, I'm here, I don't need to prove anything. And this gesture, though invisible, reverberates. It calls forth what is compatible. And money, contrary to popular belief, is extremely sensitive to vibration. There are times when all you can do is not do. The world doesn't teach us this. But life does. When there is space between words, poetry is born. When there is space between thoughts, intuition is born. And when there is space between desires, abundance is born. In a silent forest, I realized that the presence of sound is a choice, but silence is of origin. It was there before me. It will be after. And it is in this that the flow reveals itself. It is in this that money learns to enter. It doesn't like slamming doors. It prefers open portals. Nothing valuable comes screaming. The beauty of a sunset. The feel of cold water on your feet. The warmth of a hand who understands you. All of this settles in slowly. And true money, the kind that brings lightness and not weight, comes from the same place. Silent, gentle, present. So today, when I feel the noise growing within me, I choose to be silent. Not the silence of absence, but of profound presence. In this place, the world speaks to me again without words. And money, finally, returns to visit me. Not because I called it, but because I listened. In the heart of Yellowstone Park, I watched a river flow across an icy field, so lightly it seemed to fly. No rock obstructed its path. No curve required effort. The river simply flowed, as if it knew exactly where to go. And then I understood, everything natural flows without struggle. Money is like that too. Nature doesn't pressure what wants to bloom. The flower bud doesn't rush to open. The tree doesn't stretch its branches by force. Everything moves with its own intelligence, silent, patient. It is in this rhythm that abundance thrives. Where there is haste, there is noise. Where there is harmony, there is prosperity. The leaves that fall in autumn don't rebel. They follow the times. The air, the tides, the clouds all obey the flow without needing to understand it. There's no planning between the seasons. They simply surrender. And everything continues. Everything endures. Everything prospers. Money listens to this same tune. An Alabama farmer once told me, "The earth only gives when we don't interfere." He didn't read books of wisdom, but he was wise. He planted with love, waited with respect, and harvested with gratitude. He never forced the earth. He never demanded from heaven, and he always had more than he needed. Water flowing between rocks doesn't fight for space, it glides. And yet, over time, it shapes everything around it. It's lightness that transforms, not weight. Money that comes from brutal effort is expensive. But what comes from the flow generates peace, and peace is the new form of wealth. On the Texas prairies, wild horses run free with no apparent direction. But there's order in the seeming chaos. They follow instincts, not agendas. They're true to what they feel, not what's expected of them. And that's what keeps them going. Money, like these horses, doesn't respond to strict reins. Nature wastes no energy trying to be something else. The oak tree doesn't try to become a pine tree. The wind doesn't try to blow all the time. There is pause, there is rhythm, there is wisdom in every interval. Money follows this same logic. It comes when you are who you are, not who you think you should be. Everything authentic finds a way. Just as a root seeks water even in dry land. It feels, it follows, it doesn't force. Abundance manifests in the same way. When there is listening, not imposition. When there is openness, not rigidity. When there is trust, not despair. The sun doesn't need to prove its brightness. It simply is, and yet it warms worlds. Presence has this power. You don't need to fight to be worthy. You already are. When this is remembered, the money returns. Not as a reward, but as a reflection of the truth you inhabit. There's a stillness in the movement of nature. Even when everything is agitated, there's order. Thunder doesn't come without purpose. Drought doesn't come without transition. Everything has a cycle, and money does too. Knowing how to align with it is more important than trying to control it, because it too is nature. Mountains don't move, yet they transform the climate around them. This taught me that steadfastness isn't rigidity. It's presence. Money often comes not to those who run the fastest, but to those who are most whole, most centered, most truthful. The hummingbird doesn't fly out of anxiety. It flies by instinct. It goes from flower to flower with grace, precision, and lightness, and it finds nectar. Not because it seeks it desperately, but because it is in tune with it. The same is true of the relationship with money, harmony before effort. In the desert, there are plants that survive on almost nothing, because they've learned to trust in life's exact measure. They don't exaggerate, they don't beg, they don't waste. They thrive within their means. And what's possible for those who trust always expands. Money grows where there's respect for the timing of things. Observing nature is reminding the body that it knows the way. It's silencing the mind that wants to command. It's seeing that there is wisdom in not knowing, that there is wealth in not controlling, and that true abundance isn't accumulation, it's flow, a flow that already exists, a flow that includes you. So, when everything seems still, observe nature. It's always moving, even when it seems still. Money is too. It's never absent. It's just waiting for you to remember what it's like to be part of the dance, not its conductor. Once upon a time, in a village nestled among barren hills, there lived a simple man named Eli. For years, he chased everything others called prosperity: land, agreements, promises. His mind never slept, his body always ran. But the more he accumulated, the more the emptiness grew. Money came, but it didn't stay. He woke before the sun and slept long after the moon's last breath. His pockets were always full, but his soul was empty. He bought whatever he wanted, but never felt it was enough. Restlessness grew along with his earnings. Anxiety masqueraded as ambition. The flow was beginning to stall. One day, exhausted, Eli went to visit a wise old man who lived beside a lake. The man had no possessions, no fame, and no hurry. But there was peace in his eyes, and in the air around him a lightness Eli had never felt. Seeing Eli arrive breathless, the old man simply offered him tea and silence. They sat for long hours, without exchanging many words, just staring at the lake. The leaves fell. The wind gently touched the shores. The silence was thick but welcoming. And for the first time, Eli didn't feel like filling that moment with words or excuses. He just breathed. The old man then said, "Money is like this lake. If you stir the water too much, you can't see the bottom. But if you stop, it shows you what was always there." These words passed through Eli like a warm whisper. Something inside him gave way, and with it came a new weariness. A weariness of wrestling with the unseen. In the days that followed, Eli made no plans. He didn't rush. He simply tended what he already had. He mended the field's fences. He sat with his sons more often. He gazed at the sky without rushing. And curiously, even without seeking them, opportunities began to appear. A land that had previously been barren began to flourish. A long-time client who had disappeared reappeared with a new proposal. A friend returned a sum he'd forgotten years ago. And a neighbor invited him into an unexpected partnership. Money began arriving in ways Eli never could have imagined, and none of them required effort, just presence. He understood, over time, that his old quest was pushing him away from what he desired. His agitated mind blocked the paths through which money wanted to flow. When he became silent, when he stopped forcing, abundance found fertile ground to land. It wasn't luck, it was harmony. The lake remained there, silent, and Eli began to visit it often. Never to ask for anything, just to remember. Because sometimes the mind forgets what the soul already knows, that what is true comes slowly, that what is lasting doesn't need to be pulled, and that money, when it's light, stays. The village began to notice the change. Eli seemed calmer, more whole. His business was thriving, but he no longer talked about it constantly. Money was no longer a topic, and therefore no longer a concern. He was finally in the flow that had always been there, but which he couldn't see. The transformation didn't come from outside. It came from an encounter with silence, with the landscape, with time itself. He exchanged noise for listening, haste for trust, and it was in this space that abundance blossomed, like a flower that had always been underground, waiting for spring. Eli never chased after it again. He walked slowly, with simple steps. He listened more than he spoke. He worked less, but with more clarity. He didn't hoard. He gave, and for some reason, the money always came back. Because it was no longer the center of everything, it was just part of the dance. This man didn't become a master, nor a saint. Just someone who understood that money isn't the goal. It's a reflection. And that life, when lived with presence, brings everything that's needed, at the right time, at the right pace, in the right flow. Today, if you pass through that village, you might find him sitting by the lake. Perhaps silent, perhaps smiling, but certainly unhurried. Because those who have discovered the flow no longer need to rush, and the money, it keeps coming, like the wind, like water, like everything that knows its way. Money isn't what's in your pocket, but what vibrates in the invisible field of those present. It doesn't respond to numbers. It responds to tuning. Like a song that only plays when the radio is well tuned, money only manifests when the entire being is on the same frequency as it. And that frequency isn't fear, it's trust. It isn't haste, it's presence. Some people try to conquer money as if it were a trophy, but it's not an object of conquest. It's a consequence of an internal state. People with the same education, the same work, the same actions. Some prosper, others don't. The difference isn't in doing, but in being. Money perceives those who are excited by it and those who merely pursue it. I've been to big cities where everyone was chasing targets and bonuses, and I saw poverty disguised as abundance. Because despite the appearance of success, the eyes were empty. The frequency was tense, anxious, disconnected. Money was present, but it didn't flow. It was a burden. It was a pressure. Then I walked through quiet areas, simple houses, peaceful people, and there I saw a different abundance. Less noisy, but more genuine. There was an air of gratitude, of contentment with what they had. And, curiously, these people didn't feel lack, because their frequency was that of sufficiency. And money likes that. Attunement to money doesn't begin in the pocket. It begins in the mind. Or rather, it begins in the heart. When the inner realm is at peace, the outer realm responds with resources. And this isn't a mystical promise. It's the Tao in motion. What's within shapes what's without. Always. Think of a radio station. If the dial is out of range, the sound is distorted. The music is there, but you don't hear it. The money is there, always. But if your frequency is out of tune, fear, urgency, scarcity, you can't hear the signal. Adjusting is the first step, and adjusting isn't a technique. It's surrender. It's abandoning blind effort and listening to what's happening inside you, because money doesn't respond to what you do once. It responds to what you vibrate every day. And that can't be faked. It can be felt. Once, in a small community in Colorado, I heard a woman say, "When I started giving thanks before receiving, everything changed." She didn't study energy or universal laws. She simply felt. She tuned her frequency to abundance, and abundance responded. The frequency of money is a delicate dance. It's not made of rigid steps, but of conscious movements. You don't attract it with brute effort, but with inner lightness. And this lightness arises when you let go of control, when you surrender fear, when you live more in the present. Imagine a magnetic field around you, everything you feel becomes a pulse. If there's tension, it emits resistance. If there's trust, it attracts. There's no judgment, only resonance. Money doesn't come to those who beg. It comes to those who align themselves, those who vibrate with it. This explains why, often, when we give up on something, it finally comes. Not because we give up, but because we stop resisting. The frequency changes, the field opens up, money notices. It approaches those who don't place it on a pedestal, but treat it as a natural ally. In nature, nothing is constant, but everything is harmonious. The wind doesn't always blow in the same direction, but follows a rhythm. Abundance is also unpredictable, but it is coherent. When there is internal coherence, it finds its way. Money prefers those who live wholeheartedly, not with a mask. You can repeat affirmations, make plans, achieve goals. But if the foundation is disconnected, none of it flows. Vibration doesn't lie. Life listens to what's behind the words. Money does too. It listens to your silence, your gestures, your true intention, and it responds to them. So rather than trying to conquer money, feel part of it. Get into the music. Align yourself with the tone. Abandon the idea that it's something outside, distant, difficult. It's a frequency, a wave, and you can learn to ride that wave gently, not effortlessly. Abundance doesn't come to those who fake it, nor to those who force it. It comes to those who are already in a place to receive it. And this place isn't physical. It's internal, a vibration of openness, trust, and serenity. And money, upon realizing this, approaches, because it has finally found someone who speaks its language. Many want money, but few know how to receive it. There's an invisible field surrounding those who feel guilt, shame, or fear when thinking about wealth. And this field repels, even unintentionally. The universe doesn't judge, it only responds. And if your field says, "I don't deserve it," life listens. The energy of receiving isn't active, it's receptive. It's like the soil waiting for rain. It doesn't run, it doesn't shout, it doesn't demand, it simply opens. When you feel worthy of being cared for by life, something dissolves. Money feels it. It doesn't knock on doors locked by self-sabotage. I've seen generous people refuse gifts, opportunities, and compliments. They gave so much, but didn't know how to receive it. And money, being part of this flow of exchange, was also lost. Receiving is an art that begins with permission. You need to allow yourself to be supported. Once, in a cabin in Utah, I met a woman who lived simply but had everything she needed. She said, "I trust that what's mine will find me." And this was evident in the way she lived, open, calm, present. She didn't chase after it, but the money came. The root of blockage isn't always external scarcity, it's internal denial. The fear of appearing greedy, the trauma of learning that money corrupts, or that being spiritual means living with little. But true spirituality isn't afraid of the flow, it is the flow itself. Receiving is an intimate gesture. It's opening your heart, letting go of your defenses, trusting. Like someone who dives into a river and trusts they'll float. Money is water, and it only flows where there's room for it to flow. A tense body, a closed heart, a judgmental mind, all these are stones in the riverbed. Most people don't realize they're saying no to money without realizing it. With thoughts, of unworthiness. With automatic phrases, "This is too much for me," "I don't know if I can handle it," "I'm not good with money." Each of these thoughts becomes an invisible fence around the field. It takes courage to receive, courage to see yourself as worthy, courage to break with the idea that struggle is nobler than ease. There is lightness in abundance, but it frightens those who have grown accustomed to wait. Therefore, opening up the field may seem uncomfortable at first, but it is liberating. A woman once told me that she began to prosper when she began to give thanks before even receiving. It was a small but powerful gesture. She changed her vibration. She said to the universe, "I'm ready," and the universe responded. Money, like everything else in life, needs this invitation. In the middle of the Arizona desert, there are flowers that only bloom when it rains. They don't rush, they don't hold back. They're always ready. Are you? Is your soul as open as these flowers? Or do you still carry the scars of old disappointments, of old mistakes? Money doesn't judge. It feels. If you feel like something freezes whenever money approaches, maybe it's not bad luck. Maybe it's protection, a protection that no longer serves, created by a mind that wanted to shield you from pain. But now you've grown, and you can let go, you can trust, you can open up. Open the field with simple gestures, a thank you, a sincere yes, a kinder look at yourself. Don't wait until you feel ready, because readiness doesn't come first. It's born when you move. And money moves with you, not against you. The universe is generous. It doesn't want you to just survive. It wants you to flourish. And money, when aligned with the Tao, is not greed. It is flow. It is exchange. It is support. Allowing yourself to receive it is honoring this flow. It is saying yes to life, which wants to care for you along this path as well. So, if money seems far away today, observe your field. Is it open? Or is it full of invisible thorns? Sometimes, what's missing isn't more action, it's more permission. Less control, more surrender. And this surrender starts within, with a small gesture, opening your arms. Money doesn't belong to the one who holds it, but to the one who lets it flow. Like water that accumulates in closed lakes and rots, money held back by fear ceases to be alive. It needs to circulate, move, touch, and return. A closed fist receives nothing. An open heart transforms everything. Attachment often stems from the fear of losing. But it's this same fear that prevents us from gaining. When you cling to money as if it were your last breath, it slips away like the wind through your fingers. The Tao shows us that what is forced breaks, and abundance is delicate. I've met people who, upon achieving what they wanted, lost their spark, because money became a prison. Every decision was about fear of spending, of losing, of not having more. Attachment creates scarcity even in abundance, because the mind remains on guard. And where there is defense, there is no flow. The Tao doesn't teach us to reject wealth, but to not depend on it. True detachment isn't contempt, it's trust. Trust that if money leaves, it can return. Trust that the source isn't outside, but within, and that true value isn't measured in numbers. In the peaceful landscapes of Oregon, I saw families who lived with little and smiled with much. They didn't count what they had, they just shared. Money flowed between them like a river between firm banks. There was never a shortage. because no one clung to it as something that defined who they were. Letting go isn't being irresponsible. It's being free. It's being able to say yes or no without fear. It's being able to donate, invest, rest all without guilt. It's knowing that life is movement and money is just one of its rivers. The river that flows between your fingers and returns through unexpected paths. Often, when I stopped watching every penny, more money appeared. Not because I completely relaxed, but because I stopped suffocating. The energy of excessive control is like a knot in the flow. When the knot loosens, the flow returns. And money senses it before you even realize it. I've caught myself giving thanks for losses because they're what opened the door for something new. What seems like a way out is sometimes just movement. The money that flows out can be the same thing that clears the way for another kind of wealth. Nothing is lost when there's trust. Attachment arises from the illusion that we are needy. But the soul, at its core, is abundant. It doesn't hoard its shares. And it is when we return to this silent center within ourselves that detachment becomes power. A gentle, tranquil power that attracts effortlessly. I remember an old fisherman in Maine who said, "The sea never owes me anything. I just cast my net." He didn't charge, he didn't count his fish ahead of time, and yet he always came back with enough. His detachment was faith, a faith the sea understood. Money, too. The deepest wealth is that which depends not on having, but on being. When you let go of the need to prove, to accumulate, to control, something within you aligns. And in this alignment, money ceases to be an enemy, ceases to be a mystery. It simply comes and goes and comes again. Detachment is the space between what you have and what you are. When this space is clear, everything flows in and out with ease. You don't hold the water, but drink from it. You don't hold the wind, but breathe with it. Money is just another element of this dance. If there's something you fear losing today, maybe it's time to let go. Not to push it away, but to allow it to return with renewed strength. What's yours doesn't require a struggle, and what requires constant struggle may need to be revisited. Letting go isn't abandoning it, it's trusting. Ultimately, everything that remains unattached is truer. Love's ideas, paths, and money. Because when you let go, it reveals its true colors, a messenger, not a master. A reflection, not an end. A river, not an anchor. At the end of every search, truth reveals itself in silence. It's not effort that brings, it's space. Life doesn't require conquest to offer. It moves where there's surrender, like a river choosing the freest path. Money, being part of this same flow, also chooses open fields. Those who don't treat it as a prison, but as a passage. Observe nature at its calmest. The mirror-like lake, the quiet tree, the light breeze between the hills. None of these elements struggle with time. They are there, simply being. And in this entirety, they receive everything. Money hears this same silence and responds. Have you ever noticed how everything that truly matters arrives gently? Peace, love, understanding, an unexpected reunion. None of this needs noise. None of this feeds on urgency. Real money, the kind that brings freedom, is of the same nature. It comes like a breeze. It comes when you don't close the windows. It's not about ignoring the material world, but about remembering who you are within it. You're not here to control every penny. but to be part of the flow. A flow that nourishes, expands, and sustains. And money is a reflection of this, not the center. It follows the direction of your presence, not your obsession. What you truly need is already coming. But if the mind is too busy demanding, it won't see it. The Tao doesn't force things, it invites. And money, when it comes this way, enters without fanfare. Because abundance doesn't shout. It simply exists, waiting to be recognized. Make space in your field. Not with formulas, but with surrender. Walk within yourself and release the invisible knots of pressure, haste, and lack. Each knot that unravels is a new door that opens. And money, being a flow, enters through the cracks of trust, not through the demands of fear. Trust is not an illusion. It is the foundation of everything that grows with truth. No tree knows if next summer will bring rain, and yet it grows. No animal is guaranteed winter food, and yet it lives. You can live this way too, aligned with the rhythm that cares without regret. Imagine yourself as an open field. No fences, no warning signs, just the horizon, wide and silent. In this space, anything can happen. This is how money moves. It seeks fields like these, spaces without resistance, where it can rest, where it can circulate, where it can belong. When you let go of the idea that money is a difficult thing, it changes its appearance. It becomes a partner, energy, movement. It stops being the focus and becomes a means. And when that happens, life reorganizes itself. Because life never intended you to be a slave to something that should only serve. Every time you choose to trust instead of demand, something changes. It may not be immediately visible, but it does. A new vibration enters the field. A new wind begins to blow. And with it, everything that was waiting outside begins to move, including money. The wisdom of the Tao is too simple for the mind that seeks proof, but it is profound enough to transform those who listen. There is nothing to do, only to remember. Remember that you are already enough, that the flow already includes you, and that money is not a reward, it is a reflection of your calm, your openness, your lightness. Abundance is felt in those who live like a river, not a dam. And the lighter you are, the freer money will become. It will come because you don't demand it. It will stay because you don't hold it back. It will move because you allow it. Letting go of money isn't giving it up. It's stopping it from becoming a burden. When you do, it returns. Like rain returns to the soil that doesn't beg for it. Like the tide returns to the shore that welcomes it. Like everything that flows and doesn't need to be held back. Because the flow knows its way back. The beauty of abundance is that it doesn't require struggle, just listening, just presence. When you stop trying to convince the universe that you deserve it, the universe remembers, because it never forgot. It was you who got out of rhythm, and now you can get back in. No rush. No guilt. What if what you've been searching for was already at your door, just waiting for you to be still, to make room? To trust the invisible? Money isn't a secret, it's a consequence of a state, of a frequency, of surrender. And that surrender begins now in the silence that hears everything.